We break the silence, we open the door. Love and compassion, that's what we're here for. With every story, with every breath, we find connection in life and in death.
Everyone, welcome to the Little Hospice Podcast. I'm Roxy.
And I'm Kevin.
And today on our chair, we've got Nicola Nuttall. Hello, Nick.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hello, thank you for coming. You are the author of The Stars Will Still Be There, which I finished reading last week on holiday.
It's a good read in Santorini, isn't it?
It is a good read in
Good read in
Santorini,
Santorini.
yeah. And honestly, I can't say the last time I've read a book, so...
Oh, I'll take that. Thank you.
No, it was really good. Do you want to let our listeners know what obviously inspired the book and tell us a little bit about Laura?
Yeah, okay. So my daughter Laura, my eldest daughter Laura, was in her first term at university. She'd just gone down to London. Prior to that, she'd spent the summer working in Chicago as an intern. She'd managed to create herself an internship working for the governor in the midterm elections.
Oh,
And she went
serious
out
business.
there. Yeah, she made up this great story about how she was staying with the uncle of a friend of hers, and her friend was there as well. It turned out she'd actually rented the basement from a Colombian family, and we knew nothing of that.
It sounds like it's going downhill fast.
I think that she knew full well that we'd have been a little bit less enthusiastic about her going, but she was very ambitious. So she spent the whole summer out there, and she needed a 3 A's to go and study international relations at King's. She was very bright. And in that first couple of weeks, she'd phoned and said, I'm getting loads of headaches. And I thought, oh, I get migraines as well. Oh, that's a real shame that you've inherited that too. And she came home for the weekend and we went to Lytham for the day. And she said, this really weird thing happened. I was sitting on my bed reading a book, and then I woke up and I was on the floor and I'd bruised my cheek and my face was all wet. And I said, oh, well, when you go and register with your GP, your new GP in London, make sure you mention that and mention the headaches. And she did, and they said, just keep an eye on it and just see what happens. And then she joined the Royal Navy University unit down in London, and they sent her for a medical. And she just run her first marathon in May, as well as doing her A-levels at the same time. And so we didn't think there was going to be anything to worry about, but she had to go for an eye test at Boots in the Westfield Centre in Stratford. And she just went in on her way to a lecture, and they said, oh, we can't pass you because there's swelling, there's papilledema behind your eyes, and you need to go straight to Moorfields Eye Hospital. But she just got a job working at Ladbrokes, and she couldn't get through to them on the phone. So she walked all the way to their shop. Then she went back and did a presentation that she had to do. And eventually she took herself off to Moorfields, and they said they couldn't really see anything. So she said, don't worry. They say it's fine. But obviously I spent the whole night worrying, thinking, I don't like swelling behind the eyes. And I spoke to somebody I knew who was an ophthalmologist, and I asked them, and they said, oh, it could be lots of reasons. It's not always something really sinister. But the next day I phoned Laura to see how she was feeling, and the phone just rang out, and we kept trying to phone her, and we were all trying to phone her. And eventually she picked up, and the phone had been on silent because she had the worst headache of her life and she couldn't stop throwing up. So with the information about the swelling and the headaches, I just thought, oh, that's not good. So Gracie and I raced over to Preston, got the last train down to London. We kept trying to phone her again, but the phone was just ringing out, so we had to get a security guard to let us into her room in Halls, and she was curled up on the bed. So we kind of got her dressed and took her to Homerton, which was her nearest A&E, and they did a scan that night. So we were very lucky in that they did a scan that night about 3 a.m, and they said, oh, it looks like you've got a brain tumour. And Laura said, plot twist. That was her response to that, plot twist. So we had to go and unpack all the things we'd packed out in her room in a new Halls, bring everything home, find a surgeon, and just start that whole process. And the surgery was planned for 2 weeks after she got back. And by this point, we'd been told there were 8 brain tumours, but one that was quite a big one that was pressing on different parts of her brain and changing her behaviour, actually. It made her very unemotional, which is something that we got used to her not being the most emotional person. So we hadn't really noticed it as a personality change, but it also gave her really bad headaches, really bad pain. And on the morning of the surgery, we needed to get her to Salford for 7:30 in the morning. So at 5:30, we went to wake her up, and she was just staring at the ceiling. I thought, oh gosh, she's really nervous. She's just like, doesn't want to talk to anyone. She's just staring. And then actually we realised she was unconscious, although her eyes were open. And then she had a huge tonic-clonic seizure, and we had to phone an ambulance, which took her to Blackburn. And eventually we persuaded them to take her on to Salford because we really needed that surgery. But she didn't wake up for the entire day. So we had no idea whether she was going to wake up or whether there'd been a bleed on the brain or anything. We had no idea. But the surgeon very bravely did operate. He kept her in an induced coma overnight, and the next morning he kind of warned us that she might not be able to speak. It might have impacted on her speech centres. And I squeezed her hand 3 times to say I love you, and she squeezed it back 4 times to say she loved me too.
Yeah.
And she came round, and we thought, oh, it's brilliant. She's okay. She's going to be fine. And then a week later, we went to get the information on what kind of tumour it was, and it was glioblastoma, which I knew from my research was the worst thing it could be, really. And Laura asked the surgeon, could she go back to university that year, or did she need to wait till next year? And he said, I'm sorry, you won't ever go back to university. And as we walked out with him, I asked him how long he thought she had, and he said without treatment about 3 months, and with treatment 12. And bear in mind, she's 18 at this point. So from my perspective, I just thought that cancer was something that we were getting a whole lot better at. Every time you pick up a newspaper, it says there's a new cure, and we've cured this cancer now, and we've made huge inroads. And I knew people that had breast cancer and prostate and leukemia that were living good lives and long lives. So you kind of think that rising tide lifts all boats, but actually it doesn't.
No.
And there are cancers that you can survive and cancers that you won't. So she then started on the standard of care, which hasn't changed for more than 20 years. So it's surgery, if you're lucky, radiotherapy, and one type of chemotherapy that everybody gets, even though it only works for about 7%. And I just couldn't believe that was all that was available on the NHS. That was all we had. So we did a lot of research and identified a treatment that was, it was a vaccine made from the tumour tissue. And our surgeon said, yeah, there's enough tumour tissue to make that. But then when it came to it, there was only a sliver. And although we got to the point of raising all that money, we still couldn't do it because without that tumour tissue, you can't make a vaccine. So then we did more research and found a clinic in Germany that we could go out to that did electrohypothermia and a virus which basically highlights tumour cells. So it acts like a highlighter pen. It goes in through the bloodstream, finds the tumour cells, that acts as a highlighter. And then the electrohypothermia simulates a fever. So the body's looking for the source of the infection and then goes to those tumour cells that have been highlighted. And actually that was a really easy treatment in that it had no side effects. It just meant we had to go to Germany every 6 weeks, which was not the easiest, particularly through COVID. And during that time, because all Laura's friends had gone off to university, I sort of through Twitter and my alter ego, Shit Scared Mum, set up a bucket list, and we started to try and find things that Laura could do to keep her entertained while she was having treatment. And so we ended up with a bucket list that got madder and madder. And
You can tell she was definitely ambitious.
she was definitely ambitious. She was definitely ambitious. But lots of people got in touch and said, I can't help with that, but you want to come and do this?
Oh, yeah.
So things got added to all the time, and she did extraordinary things. And we were lucky in lots of ways in that it was the British Airways 100th anniversary, and they did 100 random acts of kindness. Unfortunately for us, Laura's story was picked up, and we went out to South Africa and went on safari and travelled out business class. We went to New York to watch Saturday Night Live being filmed, which is Laura's favourite programme. And she got to meet the cast and do lots in New York. We filled that with really interesting activities. And some of them were like really, really random. And for someone with Wigan heritage, she really wanted to go to the Heinz Beans factory.
Yeah.
She'd seen it on Inside the Factory on the TV, and she went, oh, I really want to go there. Actually, it's really hard to get a visit to the Heinz Beans factory. And the person before us had been Prince William, I think.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, she got to go and do everything, do a bit of tasting, and she left with bottles and cans all with her name on it, which she loved. She also went to the Uncle Joe's
Uncle
Meatball
Joe's,
Factory,
yeah.
which I was there for that. That was great. 3 ingredients. That's all.
I know. I
Is
see,
that
I
all
didn't
it
know
is?
that. Yeah.
3?
Honestly, this
3
That's a top
ingredients.
secret recipe.
literally
Oh, yeah.
this smell of Uncle Joe's mint balls just completely covers the whole of Wigan town centre.
Yeah, you can't get on a train without
No.
smelling it. Stand by the station.
So it used
Wigan
to...
and mint.
Yeah.
Not quite sure that matches,
They
but
make
yeah.
they make vodka and everything now. It's crazy, honestly.
Go all around the world, those little
Absolutely.
little mint balls. But yeah, she loved that. And she'd also been doing her advanced driving. She passed her advanced driving before she went off to Chicago. And having her license taken away was really tough. So she wanted to drive as many vehicles as she could that she wasn't allowed to drive on the roads. And honestly, that list was insane. So she did a HGV, or she did HGV twice, a bus, massive tractor, monster truck, motorbike, what else? A crane, a digger, a Royal Navy warship, a yacht.
Oh, wow, she's living every fantasy.
And a London tube train. So that was quite exciting. But yeah, people just kept offering other things, and she never ever said no. When we were on safari, she was driving the safari vehicle with the British Airways pilots in the back, and we were in a thunderstorm, thunder and lightning. The road was disappearing. The guy sat next to her said, "You've got one chance of getting up this hill, Laura." And I'm in the back going, "And what happens if she doesn't? There's
This
wild
sounds like
animals
an
everywhere."
incredible Netflix special. It really does.
Absolutely.
She really did fill her time. And then she actually went back to university. So that would have been kind of 12 months after she had surgery, maybe 10 months after she had surgery. She got a place at Manchester to study politics, philosophy and economics.
Wow.
Went back and lived in halls, even though she was on chemo for a lot of
There's
that
no
time.
stopping.
And she graduated with a 2-1. And she, in that time period, had been back and had a further 2 brain surgeries.
Wow.
So it was quite extraordinary.
Very extremely extraordinary.
Yeah, so
Wow.
to see her graduate was
Oh.
quite something.
She sounds like an absolute force
What a
of
memory.
nature.
Force of nature, absolutely.
Definitely. She
Yeah,
sounds
so
amazing.
we were doing the Great North Run after she graduated in the September, and she was starting to apply for jobs and things. And then she went for a quarterly scan, and the tumour was back. So they said they were going to start radiotherapy again. And by the time we went back for the planning scan, it had grown back in the 2 weeks. So we were told to kind of get prepared, and we brought Christmas forward, and we got cards and presents from literally all around the world. People had followed our story on Twitter. We ended up with 60,000 followers on there. And then we paid for another treatment called Avastin, as you probably know about, and that actually improved things for a while. But she died in May 2023, and 10 million people saw the tweet that announced that she died. So she touched a lot of lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
in that time.
I think for me, Nick, when reading your book, it was that feeling as a parent, like that anger that I would have at obviously that diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it being a diagnosis that obviously is the one diagnosis that is horrendous and is like a time bomb, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And 12 to 18 months is the prognosis for that disease. But some people I know have had literally a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
And there's one little girl called Emily that was on holiday in the Lake District with her family, and she never went home from that holiday. And she was 8. So it's a horrific disease, and I'm part of a group called the Angel Mums who've all lost children to brain tumours. And within that group, I'm one of the lucky ones because I got 23 years with Laura, and some of them only got 2 or 3 years. So it's horrific. And the thing is, it's the biggest cancer killer of children and adults under 40, and it gets about 2% of the cancer spend. So how does that make any sense to anyone?
It makes no sense.
No.
And you said earlier about, we read newspapers, we see news articles on our phones where this cancer's got this treatment, but nothing seems to be getting better.
No.
And you think there's got to be more we can do.
Yeah.
Pool resources, talk to each other, because a lot of the times you find there's a disconnect between the healthcare professionals, the medical community, and those that are running trials, and you have to be the force that drives it to find it, and it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't be, because you have to trust that your your oncologist and your clinical nurse specialist, they know the trials and
Yeah.
they'll tell you about it, but that isn't the case.
No.
And people have to find them themselves. And we have our own business, and we have a manager who was able to kind of literally take the reins and say, just do whatever you need to do. So I had then time to do the research and the fundraising, because if you don't have that, you have no options.
No.
You are literally given a death sentence. And why is that?
Yeah.
Why is it with the less survivable cancers? We've just kind of gone, they're too hard. We'll concentrate all our efforts on these ones that affect more in terms of numbers. But these are the ones that are really lethal, and these are the ones that
Absolutely.
kill
They are,
people.
and if we don't look at them properly, it's like with other diseases where they class as rare diseases. If we don't get a foothold on them now, they will become bigger numbers, because at the moment, yes, it's far and far between individual numbers, but it will grow.
Yeah, it will. And
It
look
will
what
grow.
we've achieved with leukemia.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Children
yeah.
do well now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It doesn't kill everybody that has
No,
it, and it
no.
used to.
No.
But we've put effort into that. And you look at what we've achieved with the COVID vaccine and things like that.
Yeah.
Once you actually apply money and effort to something, you can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And it has to be sustained effort and sustained finance.
Definitely. But I just find it really sad that it takes people to go through what you've been through and obviously really sort of drive forward Laura's legacy and obviously keep fighting like you are doing for that research. But yeah, for us as healthcare professionals, it's very easy for us to be sort of, in a room with somebody, give them a heartbreaking diagnosis and then just say this is the treatment and this is the way things are, and this has been the way things have been for years and years, and nothing's going to change. And then it takes for you to have such an impact on your family, also looking after Laura, trying to be a mum to Gracie, trying to be a wife as well, but then doing all that research in the background.
It's really hard. And we were doing things that people at the time thought were ridiculous. We paid to get whole genome sequencing done, which should be done automatically.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't, and it still isn't actually. It's about 15% get whole genome sequencing. Sometimes because there are no freezers. Something as basic as that.
God.
So we paid to have it done in Germany. We had DNA sequencing and RNA sequencing. And then that information was sent to a professor out in LA called Michael Castro. He ran it through an AI program. So all the mutations against all the available drugs, and you get a report saying these are the drugs with the best efficacy for your tumour. So then you present that to your oncologist and they say, we don't have that. That's not licensed here. So I was buying drugs myself. I was sourcing chemotherapy type drugs from all over the place. And that's the situation that you find yourself in.
Yeah.
Where you think the NHS would wrap its arms around you. It kind of goes, it's on you. This is all we've got. And that was a real shock. So there were huge risks taken in that. But if you're given a 12-month prognosis, what is the real risk? Because it felt to us that the real risk was doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we would go to the oncologist and I'd have printed things that I'd read on the internet, and I'd have this report and this is showing real promise and this, and he wouldn't even pick the papers up. He would just literally look at me and go, no, this is it. This is all we've got.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's so frustrating when different areas around the world are making huge progress, or they have the right to try.
Yeah.
And here we only have the right to the things that NICE has approved for the condition that you have.
Absolutely.
So drugs like Keytruda, pembrolizumab, that we accessed and purchased ourselves, that's licensed for other people's cancers, but not for brain, because no one's done the research, because no one's paid for the research.
No.
So you get caught in that loop where nothing's going to change, because without the investment in the trials, no one's going to bother doing it.
Oh my God. I know my background's haematology, and myeloma, which is one of the blood cancers, has obviously had so much money invested into the research. And sort of 15 years ago when I qualified, that was literally a life sentence. People died very quickly. Whereas in comparison to now, with all of the research, it's amazing, and people living a lot longer, often die from normal, natural, other comorbidities. And again, sort of the people who I've seen come in, patients who just go, I've seen this that's being done in America or Germany. It's always Germany. And it I mean, I sound like I'm sort of defending us, but you sort of look and go, oh, it's just something that they've read. And it's only really reading your book that you do sort of put yourself in that situation and think, oh my God, well, I would be exactly the same. You'd be clinging on to everything.
Yeah.
And quite right.
And the irony is some of the things that we did, that treatment that Laura had in Germany, that's now available in London. One of the UK's most revered neuro-oncologists is now offering oncothermia. So it's the same treatment that Laura had in Germany.
Okay.
So
that's
you go back
amazing.
5 years and they were kind of looking at us like we were lunatics, and now they're doing that. And there was a repurposed drug protocol, which included metformin. And there's now new research out through the Brain Tumor Research Charity that shows that metformin does have an impact. But at the time, people are looking at you thinking, what's all this about?
Absolutely.
What
It's
is
really
wrong with
hard.
having a more collaborative approach with family members that are doing that research? They are doing your legwork. Whether it comes to something or nothing, it's worth the conversation. It's worth the time and
Nobody is going
effort.
to work harder than a parent or
Exactly.
a partner. No one's going to be more up to date with research, because with the best will in the world, that lovely oncologist was seeing X number of patients a day, and then the next day and the next day. He's not going to go home and go on the internet and look to see what the reports are now showing.
Maybe that's the new medical think tank we need to create.
Patients.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time when we went in and I was suggesting from the reading that I'd done that we could swap from one anti-seizure med to another one that also had anti-tumour properties. And he'd never heard of it. So he went away and asked another neurologist to look into it and come back to me. And he went, I see no reason why. But that seems mad that I was suggesting
you're the one who
that.
suggested
Well,
that.
I run a children's play centre. I'm not a medical expert.
Yeah.
And I think this is where AI can play a part in things, because there is a lot of knowledge out there. It's having access to that knowledge. And sometimes it's having the right useful tools, balanced tools. But I think there is a case for these things.
Yeah, and I think we sort of drum in as healthcare professionals that obviously we work collaboratively. We discuss across multiple disciplinary teams, but I mean, do we really? Like it? It's difficult, isn't it? I think we do to the best that we can, and I think in some ways COVID has helped with things like that, because obviously we've got a lot more drugs available to us now that maybe had to become sort of accepted in COVID, and quickly sort of run through so that patients could get them to reduce footfalls to hospitals and things like that. But I think the communication between different healthcare professionals, especially in things like palliative patients with really difficult diagnoses to treat, it is hard. I don't think we do get it right at all.
No.
Yeah, and what's been interesting when we set up a Facebook group and a website, because I was just literally sharing information all the time, because people would look up glioblastoma because they had a diagnosis or someone they loved it, and they would find us very quickly and then message me to ask what they should do, which is a ridiculous situation, but I would get so many messages from people asking for advice because they don't feel that they can get it. And so we started to kind of pull a group together, and we collated some of the things that had been said to people with this diagnosis. And it was quite shocking, actually. People that were told, if you do anything outside of this protocol that we know doesn't work, I'm not treating you. I don't want anything to do with you. You're off my list. I was told it's about time you stop looking on the internet. And somebody else was told, we've been doing this 20 years this way. I think we know what we're doing. Well, you're giving people a 12-month prognosis,
Clearly
so there's not
don't.
an awful lot to celebrate there.
Yeah.
And those words that are said in an instant and just forgotten are remembered in technicolor detail.
Yeah.
And that's particularly when somebody's fighting to get a diagnosis. And so many people that I know had to really fight to get a CT scan or an MRI. And it's an average of about 5 trips to the GP before you get a brain tumour diagnosed. And Petra Hamelenko, who's a professor working on brain tumours in Manchester, thinks it's sort of 8 to 18 months for a diagnosis. That's absolutely unacceptable.
Absolutely.
But with young people, they're told it's stress, it's hormonal, it's any number of things, because it's easier to just send you away with a packet of paracetamol than it is to send you for a scan.
Yeah. Nobody ever thinks of cancer in young adults.
Why can't we
children.
move to a test first, answer second policy?
I know.
Why does it have to be fob off, then test 12 to 18 months later?
Well,
it's got
money.
to stop.
I don't know whether you're familiar with Jess's rule. That's just it's been in the press this week. There was a girl whose mum I know on social media called Jess Brady, and she was very poorly through COVID. She made 20 trips to the GP
Wow.
and was fobbed off. And by the time she paid for a private GP appointment, she had 3 weeks left to live.
Oh my goodness.
She was 26, I think. She was working on satellites.
Wow.
She was an amazingly bright girl.
Oh my God.
And she
we've
was
lost
fobbed
that
off.
skill set now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've lost that amazing girl.
Oh my God.
So Jess's law is 3 times. If somebody comes back 3 times, you need to look at it again or get someone else to look
Yeah,
at it.
absolutely.
Because we're losing far too many young people
Yeah.
being fobbed off in such a dismissal
We are,
way.
and we don't know what these young people would have achieved
No,
later on in their
no.
life.
Yeah.
I mean, Laura.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, absolutely. She'd be running us all around. She'd be on there on the stage. But brain cancer steals more years of life than any other cancer. It's more than 20 years of life.
Oh my God.
So if you compare it to something like prostate, which is around 6 years because people tend to get the diagnosis later in life, we're losing all these amazing young people. And if you use that as a metric for comparing research, then something like breast and prostate, they get 17 times more research than brain. And yet we're losing all these amazing little children.
And
It's ridiculous. It's a terrible situation.
but then I get really bitter towards like they shouldn't be getting cancer anyway.
No, they
They
shouldn't.
are children, young adults. They've got all the lives ahead of them, and you get really angry about it, and that's it. That's exactly what I could sense in your
Yeah.
book was that.
Well, the thing
that
is,
anger.
there's no measures that you could take to protect yourself
No.
against this type of cancer. It's not like there's lifestyle factors.
No.
And there are for other cancers. There are things you can avoid. The single thing you can do to avoid getting brain cancer is have previous radiotherapy. And nobody has radiotherapy unless they need it.
No.
So there's literally nothing you can do. And nobody knows why. It affects Joe Biden's son had brain cancer. Tom Parker from The Wanted had brain cancer. It's just a random selection of people and nobody knows why.
No.
And if we don't know why, that makes it so much harder to know how to stop it.
No, absolutely.
Because the government are obviously going to funnel lots of money into early detection and prevention, and neither of those things are relevant to brain cancer. So immediately we've lost out on all that funding. So we really, really struggle to fight for what we need. And the problem is that people are going to the NIHR with proposals that are getting rejected. So then they're thinking, why do I want to work in brain research? We always get rejected. I'm going to go and do something else. So we're losing all those incredibly valuable brains that would work on a cure.
Absolutely.
And it becomes self-perpetuating. That pool just diminishes and diminishes, so we won't get those proposals coming through.
No. So for you now, you're constantly an advocate for Laura, and obviously, the work you're doing on improving treatment, improving diagnosis. Is that what's your main focus now?
Well, we have the Be More Laura Foundation, and we fund research. So research is really important. Without it, we're not going to get any changes. So we've made grants of £100,000 for various different projects. One that I'm really passionate about, and we're going to put some more money into, is the professor I mentioned earlier, Professor Petra Hammerlink. She works at the Patterson Centre, which is next to the Christie in Manchester, and they're working at a diagnostic using tears, which could be absolutely game changing. So if you think that the fluid that comes out in tears is very close to the cranial.
So obviously there would be
So
DNA
actually,
markers and things in there.
So why can't we do that? So there's a trial starting there, which is phenomenal because you think the amount of money that will save and avoid biopsies and avoid just those delays that we were talking about. So there's amazing work going on there. We've also donated to a multi-arm pediatric drug trial for the Institute of Cancer Research in London, which is where Laura donated her brain. So it's nice to think that that's kind of going full circle. So there's projects that we're trying to help fund. I'm also part of a team called Brain Cancer Justice, and we protested outside Parliament earlier this month. Was that? Yes, it probably was. And we attend the APPG meetings in Parliament and basically campaign at any point that we can, just for equity, really, because there was 40 million promised by the government when Tessa Giles died of glioblastoma. even that hasn't been spent, and that was in 2018.
Wow.
And that's 40 million is not a huge amount of
No.
money, but we've spent about 15 of that, and most of that's on infrastructure. So the money is just disappearing, and nothing's changing.
No, and there's never accountability for it.
No, and that's really difficult. So there's a consortium that's about to be launched that's going to look at all the new proposals that are coming in, but we're a group that's made up of people that have lost loved ones, but also people that are still fighting. And we stood outside Parliament with the radiotherapy masks that they have to wear. And those are brutal. They're attached to a table.
Can't
and you
move.
imagine putting a 4-year-old in a mask and saying that they can't move. The claustrophobia must be horrific.
And how do you process that as a child? How can you tell your child that, you're not allowed to move, you are being pinned down to this table?
Yeah.
And I used to get really annoyed when I'd walk. I worked at Christie's for a long time, and you'd see the children coming down the corridor with a mask, and it was like Superman, Spider-Man, and it makes you feel really sad. Like, especially as a mum of 2 young boys, I just think, oh my God, how could you tell them to not even move?
It's horrific. And there's a little boy that I know who came over from Ukraine who lives locally to us, and he started his treatment age 4, and they had to give him a general anaesthetic every time he went for his radiotherapy.
And again, that fear as a
awful.
parent, knowing your child was going to go through that, either every day or every week, whatever that radiotherapy
Every day for 30
Oh
sessions.
my God.
So 6 weeks, 5 days a week.
Whereas all it
horrific.
would take is investment
Yeah.
in new technologies, new ways of working, new ways of treating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think also focused ultrasound is another treatment that's
Yes.
really exciting, and we've earmarked £50,000 to donate to a project working alongside brain tumour research with that, because that's repeatable. It's not like radiotherapy in that it has significant side effects, and it has a really good impact on
It's a
tumours.
targeted approach, so you know you're not making as much damage as other traditional medicines make.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think if we can just actually get some investment in that area and really just start thinking differently and not just going down the same route, because we're only going to get the same things. And brain tumours are massively heterogeneous. So if we all had one, they'd all be so different. So one drug is not going to work for all three of us, and yet we give everybody the same drug.
And that's why I'm a big advocate for personalised medication. So when we were talking earlier about those genetic tests, when you go for a health check, why isn't that there? Why isn't it offered? The moment you're brought into this world, those tests can be done there and then. We just need to change the way we start things right from the off. If we change it at that point, then everyone is going to get that equality, not just on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to money, doesn't it? It always comes down to the finances.
And with the whole genome sequencing, you need to use the tumour tissue for that, and you need to freeze the tumour tissue. And as I say, some hospitals literally don't have freezers. Quite often people find out that it would be useful after they've had surgery, because they've been rushed into surgery. It's a very quick process. And then they go back and say, did you freeze any? And they go,
no one told us.
No one mentioned it.
No.
So the responsibility is given to the patient who's dealing with a brain tumour
Absolutely.
diagnosis.
Well, it should be a part of the process. We're going to remove this. We're
should
going to
be
test
automatic.
it. We're going to use it.
Yeah.
Put it in the form that you would sign that before you go to theatre.
It should be part of the standard consent.
Yes.
But it
definitely.
isn't.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think it was Laura's second or third surgery, one of the surgeons coming down and saying, what's this about wanting tumour tissue freezing? What do you want that for? And I'm thinking, this is really bizarre, because I don't feel like I should be the one telling you why we need to do it.
Yeah.
But that tissue is so valuable, and if you don't have it, you can't go back and get it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
We ended up on first name terms, or Mark did, with the pathology department, because we were needing to send it out to Germany. But they're not really patient-facing, and they don't really want you phoning them up. But the surgeon and the oncologist are in 2 different hospitals as well, so nobody seems to know who's responsible. And if everyone's kind of responsible, that means nobody is. So somebody needs to be charged with that job, that you need to make sure that tumour tissue is fresh frozen. It's not taken up to pathology and left on the desk on a Friday night for them to come back in on Monday morning to have a useless tub of gunk left on the desk, because that is the case. And pathology are really frustrated by the fact that happens, but it's not connected. It just doesn't join up at all.
And if you've not got a policy or a protocol for it, then
you're not doing anything wrong.
No. And I mean, to be honest, when I had my little boy, I'd ask, could I donate the cord
Yeah.
for stem cell transplant, and the consultant at the time who'd done the section was like, "Yeah, that's never going to happen. It's too hard work." And that was the response I got. And you think, oh my
But the
God,
impact
that
that
could save
donation
so
could have
many
had.
lives, you know. And it was just there's too many, you know, jumps to go through. It
Red
was
tape.
ridiculous.
Well, we even found that when Laura had said she wanted to donate her brain. That's not something that ever gets raised. No one
No.
asks about that. No one suggests that you might want to do that.
No.
People were saying to me, "How did you manage to get that?"
It should just be a given,
it
shouldn't
should be an option that you're
Yeah,
given.
exactly.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But
No. But it's a
most people
valuable
want to help.
contribution to
Yeah.
the science.
Yeah,
How are
absolutely.
you going to change things if you're not prepared to be part of the change?
Exactly, definitely not. And that is what's inspiring about you, though, Nick. Definitely,
It's,
you know,
it's an incredible journey. I can't wait to see where it goes.
yeah, absolutely.
What happens next?
Yeah,
That's very kind. Well, we've got a petition going at the moment. We're trying to get 100,000 signatures by November.
yeah, seen that.
With the Brain Cancer Justice team. And yeah, we just keep trying to raise the profile, talk to whoever we can about it. Siobhan McDonough, the MP Siobhan McDonough, lost her sister, Margaret, to brain cancer, and she's head of the APPG there, and she's really pushing as well. So we have a really good team of people. But I mean, I really do not envy the Minister for Health, because I just think that the number of priorities he must have on his desk, it must be horrific, because everything needs tweaking,
Everything
doesn't
needs
it?
tweaking.
Everything
Yeah,
needs
definitely.
tweaking is a generous way of looking at
Yeah.
it. You know? Everything
Yeah.
needs blowing up and starting again, really. But you can't do that. You have to start from where you are, and there is so much that needs to be done, and it's a job and a half, isn't it?
Because of people like you, though, these things are hopefully gonna get done eventually.
They do. It just takes so
Yeah,
much time and
definitely.
effort and willpower.
Yeah.
And there was a meeting earlier today that was part of, and it was about trials and how if people do things and go out to Germany and do new treatments, we're not capturing that information, which is true. However, people who have a diagnosis haven't got the time to wait for a 20-year peer-reviewed study to see what the long tail of that drug's like. We don't have the time. So you can look at things as a scientist or as an oncologist or as a researcher, but then you also have to look at them as a patient or as a parent. And we're on very different pages, because even that slightest glimmer of anecdotal evidence is enough to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Whether it's melatonin or valganciclovir that I was buying from India, you know, you're reading this, right? That's worth adding in. So you do it yourself, and it's insane. But you look for hope in any possible place that you can find it.
Of course you do.
And I'll never know whether anything that we did made a difference. But she lived 4.5 years, and she was told she had 12 months. So because we did so many things, you can't isolate out the thing that worked from the things that perhaps didn't.
Yeah.
But we were told on a number of occasions, don't change anything, just keep doing whatever you're doing.
Wow.
So.
And did you find, when obviously you were told, you know, things had progressed and Laura was obviously end of life, you still had that, I'd say, tenaciousness and hope, and obviously that fight in you to make things better for the future? Did you think the communication then with healthcare professionals and sort of end-of-life care teams was very much sort of quite judgmental, really, in a way, as if to say, oh, why are you still sort of fighting?
A little bit.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of that. And then at the end we had, this is really bad, I shouldn't really say this, but we had a hospice nurse come out to the house to help us with, and she sat down and with Mark and Laura and I, and she went, right, so this is all about your end of life, straight in. And we were not at that point where Laura wanted to hear that.
Yeah.
And then she got out some leaflets and she went, and this is the carol concert that we do to remember people. I'm singing at that. So that's good. And this is the lottery leaflet.
Oh my goodness. Oh
and Mark and I were sat there and we were horrified, because
oh my gosh,
it didn't just not help. It actually made things worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure that her intentions were good. But I think sometimes when you're doing a job for over a long period of time, you kind of forget what the actual essence
I think
of that
it's
job
that
is.
desensitization, isn't it? And I think you've got to be really careful and remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice for us then? Because as healthcare professionals in that.
I think I mean, I spoke at a conference earlier this week, and the point that I tried to get across was just because we're doing things that seem a bit unorthodox doesn't mean we're stupid. We're not stupid. We're just trying everything that we can to keep someone we love alive.
Absolutely.
And although it might not be what you would do, just support your people and understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And if they decided that they're going to do a keto diet because there's some proof that works, and you think that's a stupid idea, telling them it's a stupid idea,
Yeah.
it's not helpful, is it?
No.
I mean, I would just say, be there for them and support them in the best way that you can.
Yeah.
And don't demean them and make them feel like they're being stupid, because they're really trying. Because that's all any of us want, is just more time.
Of course you do. And I think realising as well the impact that it has on you all as a family as well. And again,
every word is remembered.
Of
Every
course
single
it
word.
is,
In
absolutely.
glorious Technicolor.
Yeah.
And my friend Louise, she went to her GP and said that she thought that her son had a brain tumour. And he said to her, "My dear, your son does not have a brain tumour." And within 11 months, he was in the same house signing the death certificate. And this is what people are dealing with, being
this
told
is what
that
needs to
nobody gets a
change.
brain tumour at 19, a girl was told. And she had a brain tumour. So if you don't know, then refer, but don't patronise.
No.
And don't comment on someone you haven't seen.
No, you've not got X-ray vision.
Absolutely. I think it's that thing of, if it's got hooves, yes, it probably is a horse, but it might be a zebra.
Yeah.
And don't rule out the zebra.
Absolutely.
And don't make the zebra feel stupid because they're not a horse.
No.
I like
Absolutely.
that. Thank you, Helen. I like that.
I do like that.
Might have to use that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, thank you so much, Nick. Honestly, good luck with everything that you're doing. I genuinely think you are amazing.
Oh, let me tell you about something else.
Yeah,
I'm
go
really
for
excited
it. Go
about
for
it.
it.
So I'm developing an app.
Okay.
Oh, we
Yeah.
love a good app. It's the
We
tech
like an app.
inside.
Yeah, it's an app. And I am so excited about it, because when we were travelling back and forth to go to radiotherapy, we were travelling to the Christie from where we are in Lancashire. It was about an hour and a half. It was right over Christmas. We were going past the Trafford
Horrendous
Centre.
journey.
Horrific journey.
Yeah.
And we get home and everyone's starving and everyone's knackered and emotional. And I'd be like that, looking at the fridge, being really depressed about the fact that everyone else is in the lounge and I'm making tea out of nothing and the chippy's shut. And lots of people say to you, "Let me know if there's anything I can do to help." You make sure you let me know. And we would rather sit in a burning house than ask for help, because it's just not in our nature as people to ask for help, even though people genuinely want to give it. So this app is called Village, and it's basically, it takes a village.
Oh.
So what would happen is, in our situation, I could have set it up for myself, or someone could have done it for us. And you basically set up a calendar of things that would be really helpful to do, whether it's a meal, whether it's taking your dog out for a walk, taking the bins down the road, I don't know, doing your grass, something like that. And you invite people to join your village. When people want to help you, say, "I can add you to my village."
Oh my God,
And then
I
you
love
can
that.
click on the app, see what jobs need doing on what day. And it might be on Friday, they're coming back from the Christie Lake, I'll make them a cottage pie. All the food preferences and allergies are already in it when you register. So I would just drop it off on a Friday night, because I know that it's useful.
A modern
Tick
day
that off.
version
That's
of community spirit,
I
bringing
love
it back in
that,
a
yeah.
technological
It's
way.
essentially what would happen
Yeah.
if you lived on a street and everybody knew everybody.
Which
But
is
we
how
don't
it
live
used
in
to
that
be.
environment anymore,
No.
unfortunately. People are spread,
Yeah.
and people do genuinely want to help, but
Yeah.
sometimes we don't want to do anything because we don't want to do the wrong thing.
Exactly.
And we'd rather do nothing than the wrong thing, because that's really cringy. So we all kind of take a step back.
Yeah.
And when you do need help, you don't want to ask for it,
No,
and
not
you
at
don't want to
all.
ask for it more than once.
No.
But people genuinely would lift you up and would do bits. And if everyone does a little bit, then actually it could make a huge difference. So it's not just about radiotherapy; it's bereavement. You've just had a baby. There's so many times in your life
I
that
know.
that's
Sometimes it's hard
useful.
to reach out, but if you've got a community behind you,
Yeah.
And that way, if you go on the app and you can't do any of those things, you're not feeling awkward because you can't, because you're in part of
No.
a community.
Yeah.
And if you do the one thing you might not be able to cook,
Yeah.
but you could give them a lift to the chemist or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
So that's the idea of it.
Oh, I love
anyway.
that.
So
it's a
it's
fantastic idea.
Thank you.
Can't
That's
wait
going to
see
be for
that.
everybody then.
Yeah,
That's not just
absolutely.
subject to
No,
Lancashire
no,
or
that
anything
happens.
like
it's
that.
everywhere.
I can see that how that cross
Yeah.
promotes many different versions.
Yeah.
And
So I'm hoping that we can get a food delivery app on board, so that maybe if
Wow.
you're not local, you could
Yeah.
send
Yeah.
Just Eat voucher so they can get a takeaway on
Absolutely.
a Friday night. So
I
it's-
think things like that are needed for in periods of bereavement,
Yeah.
because what we find is obviously when a patient dies, yes, people rally round and they obviously support, but then after like the funeral, and I know me from a personal level, when somebody has died close to us, then people just carry on with the normal everyday lives
Yeah.
then, and you're still struggling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think having something like that is amazing, isn't it?
Fantastic.
You definitely keep in touch with me and give me some
Yeah,
links.
so excited. So it's just so all the images on all the framework's been created now. So we're working with a company called the Padme who are making it for us, and it's amazing. So hopefully it won't take too long
No, that's amazing.
to have it up and running. So then we just need to tell everybody about it, and obviously it's free because the whole point is to just for everybody to support each other.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Everyone loves a freebie.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Or cheese pie.
Cheese
Cheese
pie,
pie.
yeah,
What we
cheese
also
pie.
do is we send flowers, and flowers are beautiful, but you do not want 6 bouquets
No.
of flower. That
No,
you have to cut the
definitely not.
bottoms off and change the water, and you
Yeah.
can't eat them.
No,
So I would rather have a cheese pie than a bouquet of flowers any day
Edible
of the week.
arrangement, please.
I can tell you're a fellow Lancashire lady.
Pie.
A cheese pie.
A cheese
There's
pie.
very little that can't be fixed with a cheese pie.
Absolutely, a cheese pie and a brew.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, on that note, thank you so much, Nick. Honestly, that's been really
It really has.
amazing and
Thank
very
you.
inspirational. I do think I think we do all need to be more, Laura, definitely.
Oh, absolutely.
And I want a cheese pie now.
Yeah,
I want
absolutely.
a cheese pie.
Pie for tea.
And thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on
It's
the
time
next
to
episode.
talk. We'll meet you there. Bringing some light to the end of the day. The little hospice